and with the Indiana Fever today. Unfortunately, we have the horrific, terrible news that Sophie Cunningham is officially out for the rest of the season with a torn MCL.
What truly transpired on the court that fateful evening? Sophie Cunningham collapses with a devastating right MCL tear, and the Fever organization confirms her season has come to an abrupt end. Bria Hartley gets caught on film smirking. Supporters are outraged, labeling the incident deliberate. Officials turned a blind eye. League executives remain mum. Sophie's trajectory takes a devastating hit, yet she refuses to retreat. She's voicing her thoughts without reservation, directing criticism toward critics and the organization alike. So what exactly did Sophie reveal that has everyone up in arms? If you're backing Sophie, drop Team Sophie in the comments. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support means everything. Let's dive in.
Murphy's Law is once again in full effect for the Indiana Fever as Sophie Cunningham is ruled out for the rest of the season. So, what does this mean? They signed a new guard. Is Caitlin Clark ever coming back?
Supporters craved thrills this WNBA campaign, yet what they received was devastation. Sophie Cunningham faces a season-ending situation following a vicious contact that numerous observers claim wasn't coincidental. Right when Caitlin Clark's comeback was meant to ignite optimism, this development has completely shifted the atmosphere.
The hits just keep coming for the Indiana Fever. Not unexpected that Sophie Cunningham ruled out for the season, but devastating nonetheless as the injuries just continue to pile up. Of course, Sydney Colson already out for the season, Ari McDonald out for the season, and now Sophie Cunningham out for the season. That's with Caitlin Clark still out and having been out for much of the season.
Was this deliberate or simply misfortune? Let's get straight to the facts. Sophie Cunningham, among the most beloved athletes on the Indiana Fever lineup this season alongside Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Lexi Hull, is officially finished for the campaign. The reason? Bria Hartley from the Connecticut Sun essentially charged into her knee like she was trying out for football, not competing in professional women's hoops.
Listen, Sophie Cunningham was targeted, y'all. I'm telling you right now, Sophie Cunningham was targeted by Bria Hartley, and it just is what it is. It is what it is. I don't want to sit here and play games and act like, you know, she wasn't. She was targeted by Bria Hartley, and that's just the fact of the matter. And people can act like it's not all they want. I told you guys this girl was a dirty player. And that's all she did today was show how dirty she is.
The outcome? A shredded MCL, a lost campaign, and supporters absolutely livid at the WNBA for repeatedly permitting this chaos to persist without consequences. The tragic reality? Nobody's genuinely surprised. Frustrated, certainly. Enraged, definitely. Shocked? Hardly.
Now look. You can tell Bria Hartley, in my opinion, she launched herself into her knee. She did. And I've seen some of the reaction online. And guys, it's despicable. It really is. There's a lot of people celebrating this injury. And guess what? You can imagine who it is. It's members of the old WNBA fandom, the ones that root for Paige Beckers and Angel Reese and Asia Wilson and all the usual damn suspects.
If you've been following this campaign, you're aware this organization has made absolutely no attempt to safeguard its marquee players. Zero effort. Caitlin Clark has faced relentless targeting since entering the league. Sophie Cunningham, who rapidly became a supporter darling for her intensity, resilience, and character, was also receiving her portion of brutal fouls and underhanded tactics.
Sophie announcing her being out with an MCL tear, which, by the way, the MCL tear, relatively speaking, is good news because it's not an ACL tear. She's not out for like a year or anything, but she's out for the rest of this year. And they're going to miss her toughness. They're going to miss her shooting. They're going to miss her playmaking to a degree.
What action did the league take? Absolutely nothing. No financial penalties, no suspensions, not even a gentle reprimand, just deafening silence. Here's what really has supporters heated. It's not merely that Sophie's campaign is finished. It's the feeling that this disaster could have been avoided. She's incredibly effective in the paint and can frustrate opponents. When Bria Hartley came bulldozing into Sophie's knee, you could sense immediately that something was seriously wrong. Sophie crumpled. The audience gasped, and the slow-motion replay made stomachs churn. Yet instead of fury from WNBA leadership, instead of a definitive statement declaring this behavior won't be accepted, we receive silence as always. That quietness speaks volumes. It communicates to athletes. Continue playing dirty. We're indifferent.
This injury happened, and Sophie Cunningham's...
And they put immediate pressure back on both the officials and the league leadership.
This injury happened, and Sophie Cunningham's sister was none too happy about it and slammed the WNBA. Maybe you should focus less on finding players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game and protect your athletes. It's pathetic. Praying for you, Sophie. That's Lindsay. That's her sister. Well, her sister made this comment, and it brought out the scumbags.
Now let's put this situation in context. Sophie Cunningham stands 6'1", athletic, and represents one of those rare players supporters genuinely connect with. She possesses charisma, she's got the appearance, she's got the skills, she was progressing toward becoming one of the WNBA's emerging stars alongside Caitlin Clark. You'd assume the league would want to protect such talent. You'd think the organization would understand that players like Sophie are exceptional, that supporters don't just connect with anyone. But apparently not. WNBA leadership, guided by Kathy Engelbert, appears resistant to success. They'd prefer to look the other way and allow players to suffer injuries rather than actually create a product supporters enjoy watching. The timing of this injury makes it particularly devastating. Caitlin Clark is nearly ready to return after missing games, and supporters were excited. Finally, positive news for the Fever. Finally, an opportunity to regain momentum with Caitlin spearheading the effort in her sophomore season. Then this occurs. Sophie Cunningham goes down, and suddenly that comeback feels tainted. Rather than the atmosphere being purely about excitement, it's overshadowed by frustration, anger, and disappointment. Let's be completely honest here. This isn't just about one athlete suffering an injury. This represents a pattern. Sophie Cunningham's injury marks the latest in an extensive series of incidents that somehow keep affecting the most marketable, most cherished players in the organization. Caitlin Clark's persistent targeting, Sophie's knee injury, and let's not overlook other moments this season where athletes were fouled midair, pushed, or deliberately targeted with zero repercussions. If this occurred in the NBA, there would be fines, suspensions, outrage on sports shows every morning. But in the WNBA, nothing. Just keep moving. Nothing noteworthy happening.
She released a new episode of her podcast where she talked about this injury. So I wanted to just summarize for you guys what she had to say, what the updates are from her. And I'll start with saying, like, she did confirm that it was an MCL tear. She also did confirm that she will be getting surgery on this MCL tear. And an MCL is also something that you don't always need surgery depending on the severity of the injury.
I know Bria, and I'm actually really good friends with Bria, and I had been waiting to get on the pod and so we could talk about this because I did want to tweet it out, but I don't think that there was no ill intent. I think it was basketball play. I was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. She fell. Like, there's no way that she would go in there and potentially try to hurt me. And so I have nothing but love for Bria, and I even like told my mom because she tweeted something. I was like, no, Mom, like, I get it, but like I promise you that, like, I was like, Bria and I are super cool, and like she would never try to hurt me, because there are some girls that I think might, but she wouldn't do that. And so I have nothing but love, and so I hope people stop giving Bria some heat, because I don't think she meant to do that at all.
The supporter reaction. Supporters aren't accepting it anymore. They're furious. They're calling it exactly what it appears to be: envy, incompetence, and outright targeting. Sophie Cunningham isn't just any random player. She's a supporter favorite. She possesses that all-American appeal that casual supporters immediately relate to. Blonde, tall, tough, energetic. The type of athlete you can promote to mainstream audiences. That's precisely why this stings so much. Supporters recognize she was on the brink of becoming something significant for the league. Now that chance has vanished. Let's discuss the Indiana Fever's reaction to this situation because that's another piece of the puzzle. Instead of addressing Sophie Cunningham's loss with a decision that actually makes sense, the Fever choose to sign Temi Fagbenle, a veteran who hasn't exactly been dominating the scoreboard lately. No disrespect intended, but seriously, this is the solution? Sophie Cunningham, a 6'1" versatile forward who was becoming a supporter favorite, goes down, and you replace her with a veteran who averaged modest numbers. It feels like a mockery, a cruel joke. Supporters see this too. They're not pleased. They wanted the Fever to make a move that declared, "We're committed to winning. We're committed to supporting Caitlin Clark's return. We're committed to keeping supporters engaged." Instead, they received a puzzling signing that appears more like desperation than strategy. Let's circle back to WNBA leadership for a moment because this represents the real problem. Kathy Engelbert and her team have done absolutely nothing to change this narrative. Nothing. They won't address the dirty tactics. They won't protect their stars. They won't penalize players for cheap shots. The result? Supporters are losing interest, stars are getting injured, and the league's reputation is in shambles. Even Adam Silver, who technically oversees both leagues, remains silent. Completely quiet, which reveals everything you need to understand about how seriously the organization takes these issues. Meanwhile, supporters are paying the price. They purchased tickets expecting to see Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark together on the court. They tuned in hoping for a breakthrough year. Instead, they're witnessing injuries, questionable signings, and a league office that appears run on incompetence rather than actual leadership. If you speak with supporters, especially Fever fans, they'll tell you Sophie Cunningham wasn't just another roster player. She was part of what made this team entertaining to watch. Caitlin Clark might be the centerpiece, but Sophie brought energy, toughness, and that fiery personality supporters love. She wasn't afraid to get physical. She wasn't afraid to engage in trash talk. She wasn't afraid to display emotion on the court. In other words, she gave supporters something to connect with. When you remove that element, you don't just lose statistics or rebounds, you lose the soul of the team. You lose one of the few players who made this disappointing season watchable. You lose the connection supporters had been developing. Injuries like this don't just harm the Fever, they damage the entire league. Sophie Cunningham might not be Caitlin Clark, but she was part of the package supporters were buying. The Fever were one of the few teams this season that actually had momentum, that actually had players supporters cared about beyond just one superstar. Remove Sophie from that equation and you've got one fewer reason for casual supporters to tune in. One fewer storyline to follow, one fewer personality to promote. This is where the WNBA just doesn't understand. They keep claiming they want to expand the game. They keep boasting about television ratings and attendance increases thanks to Caitlin Clark. But then they allow situations like this to happen and all that progress disappears. Supporters aren't naive. They see what's occurring. They see a league more interested in pushing agendas and protecting envious veterans than building a product people actually want to watch. So, what happens moving forward? That's the crucial question. The Fever will continue with Caitlin Clark's return, certainly. But instead of being part of a growing, exciting story with Sophie in the mix, it feels like they're limping into the remainder of the season with one hand tied behind their back. Supporters feel cheated. They were promised entertainment, and what they're receiving is an injury report. Let's discuss Bria Hartley for a moment because her name needs to remain in this conversation. What she did was reckless at best, intentional at worst, and you can't convince supporters otherwise. The replay speaks for itself. This wasn't just unfortunate timing or accidents happen. She came charging in with no consideration for Sophie's safety. If this league had any backbone, there would be consequences. There would be suspensions. There would be a message sent. But we all know nothing will happen. Nothing ever does. That's why supporters are convinced this was allowed to happen, maybe even encouraged. That's the ugly part nobody wants to voice, but everyone is thinking, is the WNBA so dysfunctional that it quietly celebrates when stars get hurt? Because it certainly feels that way. Every time Caitlin Clark got knocked down, you could see smirks on opponents' faces. Every time Sophie took a hard foul, you sensed it wasn't exactly accidental. Now that Sophie's season is over, you can't shake the suspicion that somewhere in some locker room or front office, people are pleased about it. If that's the case, this league is in deeper trouble than anyone imagined. Because envy and incompetence aren't just bad for the game, they're toxic. They destroy the product from within. Meanwhile, look at how supporters are reacting online. They're furious. They're saying Sophie was targeted. They're saying the league doesn't care about protecting its stars. They're calling out leadership by name. And they're not wrong. This is leadership's mess. They allowed this environment to fester. They permit envy and bitterness to become the culture. Now they're shocked that it keeps exploding in their faces. It's not like they lacked warning signs. Caitlin Clark's treatment in her rookie year was a massive red flag. Every hard foul, every shove, every dirty play was a signal. This league has a problem. Instead of addressing it, they ignored it. They pretended it wasn't happening. Now Sophie Cunningham is out for the year. This is the result of their silence. Sophie Cunningham is sidelined for the year, and the WNBA is once again exposed as a league that doesn't understand how to protect its future. Supporters are angry, and they have every right to be, because they know this isn't just bad luck. This is the product of a culture that values bitterness over growth, envy over competition, and silence over accountability. Until that changes, this league will keep stumbling no matter how many talented players come along. Sophie Cunningham is out, Caitlin Clark is returning, and the WNBA is somehow managing to make a terrible situation even worse. Supporters see it, they're angry, and they're demanding answers. But will the league actually step up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest sports analysis.